this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in his student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wade in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Oh, I have to click that button. Now I can say, hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X on VTWProductions.com. You're listening live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 18th of November, 2018. Welcome to the show, everybody. Unfortunately, our introduction was lying, and guess what? We have no Ken today.
Oh, no.
But that is okay, because we are joined, as anybody who's seen the Twitter storm and such of me talking about coming up, by our good friends, the authors, both Jon and Rebecca Wasik. How is it going, you two?
Yeah.
Yay. Good.
Good. It's good to have you here today. So welcome, everybody. Let's see. We're going to basically we'll see how much of a show goes one way or another, but it's going to start off with a little bit of
dysfunctional deviations.
There we go. And yeah, Ken is doing all the life things and busy work stuff and things like that. So he decided to skip out on us today on this opportunity we have to talk with guests and hear about creatives and what's going on in the world around that. So starting off today, how you guys doing? It's a lovely Sunday and
It's cold.
oh, we're in Colorado. You say it's cold, but it's all the way over 40 degrees today.
That's cold to me. California-born girl.
Yeah.
That's cold.
You just gotta adapt. You gotta adjust. Get that warm blood going through.
26 years and I still can't adapt.
That is all right. No, I do understand how it goes, although it's funny because, I mean, it's still early in the year this year for us for it to be actually winter going on. But I was at Home Depot this morning, and as I was checking out, talking to the gentleman there, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going up to the mountains tomorrow to go snowboarding or something. I was just like, man, it is already solid ski season up in the mountains.
Yeah.
And I've heard some people say there's a 70-inch base or something going on up there.
Ooh, nice.
Really good skiing. And it's before Thanksgiving, which is usually a sign for us. Because for us in Colorado, I feel like if it snows around Halloween, it means we're probably going to have a normal winter. But it's been years, I think, since we've had good skiing before Thanksgiving, where they've actually had all the slopes open before Thanksgiving.
I don't usually pay attention to that because I don't ski. So.
What? You said you've been here 26 years?
Yeah, I don't ski.
Oh.
I wanted to learn, but now it's too late.
It is never too late, I must say. I tell the story back in the day of taking my mother up skiing when she was 60 years old.
Oh,
Holy cow.
And she had gone skiing prior, but not since she was 19. So she hadn't been for solid 40 years. And I was able to get her comfortably skiing in one day. Granted, when I say skiing, for me, that's little short skis, my little blades that I go on that are 2 feet long, under a yard. Because you don't need poles or anything. They're like rollerblades. They're like inline skating down the mountain. And so I got her comfortably on that and going down blues in one day.
Oh, my.
And the only reason she fell the entire day was because some 13-year-old snowboarder ran her off the mountain. Actually tumbled into her and took her down the hill. And the moment I almost killed a nameless young child for knocking my mother over the side of the mountain. She was fine, thankfully, lots of snow, but death. But no, so I do proclaim that I can get anybody to go down skis in a day, or at least blades. I see the look of trust and belief on your face there. No?
I haven't been since I had a bad skiing accident when I was 18 that resulted in a concussion and back problems that persisted today.
Yeah, because they didn't properly diagnose it because no one knew that you actually had a concussion.
Yeah, for over a year, I was never, it's like, thanks.
Wow. That sounds all kinds of fun.
Yeah.
Nope. What? I'm getting the voices in here. Copy saying doesn't like skiing and stuff like. You guys killing me.
What about ice skating, Kobe?
So yes, ice skating. Ice skating's fun.
That's the difference in ice skating is you have to push off and stuff. On skiing, you just let the mountain and gravity take you down.
Oh.
It's the same.
It's a little. I don't know. I like having control, I guess. More control.
You must learn control.
Okay. No, I can understand kind of the, not necessarily the fear, but I can understand that a little bit of concern with wanting to pick up skiing, especially the older you get and such. But I will advocate. It's one of those things that being a Coloradan or being here in Colorado, I think everybody should give it a shot. Do it some more. So I'll throw it out there. If nothing else, there's other winter sports I love that I always tell people is like, or you can do the mechanical kind where you go like snowmobiling and stuff like that, and
that might be fun.
Pretend you're on a motorcycle on the mountain.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a good time as well.
Or a speeder bike on Hop.
Oh, trust me. There's some. I love me some mechanical activities and things like that at speed. And it's those moments when you're flying down a path that's really just a little trail on the side of a mountain at like 80 miles an hour on a snowmobile, where you're wearing like a snowsuit and a helmet, and you're like, this is amazing. And then you finally get that slight moment where you remember that when I go skiing and I'm just going down the hill at maybe 20, 30 miles an hour, and like I like touch a tree, like my hand or something slaps a tree or something like that when I'm kind of messing around between them, they don't move. And it hurts. Mm-hmm. So when I'm flying down that path at 80 miles an hour on a snowmobile and I look at the trees whizzing by, I'm like, I better stay in control of this. No, I am a silly person when it comes to it, but I do enjoy some winter sports. And we have it this year, so I'm trying to decide if I get a season pass or not. Anyhow, so ice skating sounds like at least something is a winter sport that you're cool with.
Yes.
Pun intended.
I am so terrible in the sense that I wish I ever could claim that I was actually trying to pun. And I realize I don't ever. I hear it afterwards. I'm like,
That's good.
That could have been intentional. No, I am so bad about that. Anyhow. And yes, as Copy saying, listen to the Canadians, skiing is overrated. What? Oh, gosh. You just live in a flat part of the country, Copy. So for you, all you get is like ice and snow in the Canadian North. You don't have the hills to at least go play in. So, but yeah, no, so it's a little cooler here in Colorado these days. But it's a nice sunny day out today. It's not like a couple days ago when we got the freezing rain and there was a sheet of ice everything. That was fun. As I've
and that's why we stayed indoors most of the day.
That would have been smart. I tried to move around a bit and realized that for a second time now that I really need to get new tires on my car.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah, hitting the brakes and just like, oh, hey, that's not good. Anyhow. So yeah, we've been having kind of those fun things. Although I will say for a change, it's actually like it is actually winter here in Colorado now. It's no longer doing the fall. Is it hot? Is it cold? Anything like that? We're solidly like 50s and below now.
Yeah.
Probably for foreseeable future.
Puppy dog.
It's all right. It's Colorado. We're used to it. No, so it is good to have you both here. So primarily wanted to have you here because we have some new things to talk about. So, John, you've been on before talking about your book series, the Sword of Dragon series. What is new and what's going on with that?
So I gave it a very significant facelift. For starters, the first book, I'm sure you remember, The Sword of Dragons was all it was called, part of the Sword of Dragons series. And the cover artist that I had hired for it insisted to me, give it an original title, and I didn't listen to him, so now I did. So, book one has an official title all to itself, Rise of the Forgotten, which took me forever to figure out titles. I don't do good with titles, chapter titles.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because titles as a whole is such a... I mean, you guys are authors, you're creatives, you deal with this constantly, but trying to sum up everything that you put in between the covers, right, on what your project is into a handful of words to encompass what's the point of it, right? Yeah. So what's funny is I cheat now on the show because I don't put titles on the shows anymore. It's just episode this. But I used to struggle with that every week because I would write up a summary for the show as well as like the title, and I would just, it would kill me. So I can only imagine the challenge of trying to, let alone get each chapter down, right? Where you're now taking
I forgo chapter titles anymore. It's just chapter one.
I mean, what kind of process is that? Because what do you do to try to capture, be it chapter titles or overall book title as a whole, for each of you? Like, what is that process?
I know when I was trying to come up with the title for that one, I started just writing down a list of, well, it has this in it, so the rise of this, the fall of that, and I had a list of about 12 titles before the 13th one was that title. And I was like,
hey, lucky number 13.
That might work.
Hey!
But it was just like brainstorming on paper. What about you?
I think for mine, I only had like 2 possibilities, and I was like, that one sounds good. Let's go with that. That works.
Well, but so for you though, it was kind of you were able to kind of quickly come up with just a handful of options for encompassing what the overall book you knew was going to entail, or and that's another question. Do you wait till you're basically all the way finished with the book? Does a title come early
till the
or
end, once it's done?
It's different for me. For like book 1, I was about halfway through the book when I always have a synopsis of every single chapter already written out before I start writing a book. At least I started doing that about 6 years ago. And about halfway through, I started putting chapter titles on. For book 2, I didn't have any chapter titles until I was finished, and I went back, and I'm sitting there going, crap, what do I call this one? So it varies.
Well, and what was easier for you? What just felt more natural?
I don't think I have an answer to that.
No, that's okay. Well, and I'm curious because I can only imagine. I mean, it makes sense to me to need to or want to kind of like get everything down for encapsulating what you're going to include in a chapter as a whole before you even try to come up with a title for that, let alone the book. But that's another thing. Like for the breakout of your chapters and things like that, does that also come naturally? Does it get to a point where you know that the up and down is going to leave you at this point where it's like, all right, now we need to switch gears and go to a new scene or something else?
For me, yes. I know she struggles with it.
I see. Yes, I see. Like you can the emotion welling up here.
When I wrote the book, when I wrote Bloody Notes, I just wrote. I just didn't stop. Just wrote the whole entire thing, and then afterwards, I'm like, oh.
No chapter breaks.
You're
Where
like,
do I put chapters?
How do people read this?
Wasn't it
Where do I put chapters?
It was one of your friends who went through.
It was one of my other friends that was helping me with publishing. I'm like, I don't know what to do for chapter breaks. Here, read it. Tell me where you think I should put it, because otherwise it's like I have 20-page chapter and then 2. And I don't know what to do, so figure out where to cut it. And he did a good job with cutting it, and so I'm happy with where he figured out the breaks. But
well, and
I'm kind of scared with going into my next one because I don't know what to do for that.
Well, so okay, no, that's an important actually thing to note and bring up about the whole creative process, because part of what to discuss about why John's here specifically is because there's a release happening, and we're going to talk about that in a bit, but essentially the process you've been going through with these books has been re-editing the process. So, but when you first create, because you guys are both self-published, right? You have gone through all the means that, thanks to the technology we have today and the resources that are available through the internet and through knowing people, stuff like that, you don't have to go get some big publishing company to allow you to get your book in front of people, right? And that was one of the things that used to just struggle. And it's actually kind of the whole creative things today as we have, even this show that I have, let alone Twitch streamers and other things like that. People have the means through technology to just reach out to an audience anywhere in the world from basically the convenience of your own home. And so in that process, you guys wrote for yourselves, created the books, but that editing process, because I at least have found, and again, I cheat, live show where I don't get a chance to edit. And so you just accept what I get you. But the difference between, when you first kind of put it down there and then trying to get it all wrapped up in a way that you're going to want to put it in front of people. Did you guys, with your first books especially, did you edit them yourselves? Did you have help? You mentioned that you had a friend help with the chapters.
There was a couple, bless you. Again, bless you.
Excuse me.
Hey, it's National Novel Writing Month, which is when I first wrote my book.
Oh, nice.
4 years ago. I wrote it 4 years ago for National Novel Writing Month. It's a challenge, write 50,000 words in 30 days. And I got 53, slightly over, maybe 52 under. And then you could go on the website for National Novel Writing Month and have people beta read your book and say, hey, I think this works. Hey, this doesn't work. I got, I think, maybe 2 or 3 reads on that, which helped me cut out some of the details that was too much, or this beginning doesn't quite work, so you might want to tweak some of it a little bit. And that helped get some of it done. And then the other friend that did with the chapter breaks, and then me going in again and figuring out, well, I wanted it a little bit longer, so where can I add more detail into this now?
After going in and getting that initial feedback from readers saying, get rid of some detail, now it's like, wait,
but it's too short now. I need more.
So it's like, you got to figure out what's the appropriate details to add in, which is
the problem that I had. Was there was a scene where Vanessa was trying out dresses for the first time, And I went too in detail with like 3 or 4 dresses, and they're like, if it's not the dress that she's gonna pick, you need to just be blunt about it, basically. So I was like, crap.
The dress, yeah.
I like had these specific dresses picked out from one of my old fashioned books that I was like, I really want people to be able to picture what these dresses look like. But as they said, it's not important, so don't put the
I could see the challenge of that. I could see the not knowing the story and the character, the experience of first going into the shop or whatever it is to start picking that feel, that overall overwhelming kind of experience, to the selection process of now getting a specific dress kind of thing. And so I can see where that could come up. Gosh, that's got to be tough because...
Yeah, because I think originally the scene, just talking about the dresses, probably about that long. Got cut down to about that long.
Oh, wow. Well, and so... in things like that, when you're trying to create a scene or part of the story element, because there's one thing with the plots and all the, what's going to happen in the story, but when you're more specifically talking about a very detailed scene, when you're starting to write that part of the story or bring those words to life, are you picturing what's happening in your mind and you're just trying to capture all of those details in words, or do you do it more from the word perspective outward, where as you start writing, an image is created? How does it work for you? Because as a reader, it's very much I read the words, and there's a point where I stop reading the words, where you're just in that process and flow of reading. Yeah, and while the words are happening, you're really just picturing and being involved in the story in your own head, which is one of the things that's so great about reading in general. So, but from the creator perspective, how's that work?
I'm not sure how to answer that one, honestly. It's when I'm sitting there writing, it's like what you just described, but going on in my head. I'm seeing it happening in my head, and I'm writing it down, and usually my fingers are barely keeping up, if not keeping up at all, with what's going on in my head, and I have to slow myself down. That's where I came... about 6 years ago is when I first came up with this process that works for me. It's not always going to work for everyone. Where I start out with just coming up with the general story. I started with ideas, come up with the general story of the entire plot, and then I go back and I plot it out chapter by chapter, and then I go back and I write each chapter. That helps form a much...
You're outlining the overall thing. It's one because I know I've heard a lot of people where they'll start with the generally, this is what's going to happen throughout this story, right? The general plot.
Right.
And then it seems to feel like a lot of the authors I've talked to, people I've talked about creative, there might be key moments and points that are kind of already in your head.
Yep.
Like, I know this is going to happen at some point.
Yeah, we were just talking about
We'll see how that gets there, but it's going to happen because that's where this book's coming from. But then it seems like, and we've talked about before, John, both, all around about that creative process, though, that it kind of starts to build itself, right? That once you start digging into the story is when it really starts to flourish, and everything from characters becoming more deep and kind of becoming who they are themselves. Yeah. I often jokingly say that I hear from many authors how characters will do things they want to do, not what you want them to do.
Well, and I found that out the hard way already, where I was going to have a character at the end of book 3, which I'm going back to very soon to start working on again. He was going to do something, and then as I'm writing the synopsis, I'm like, he's screaming at me, hell no, dude, I'm never going to do that. Well, fine. I guess I gotta figure some mess out.
See, but I find that very interesting because for me, that tells me that these characters have depth, they have life, and they have, their own motivations and things that are going to drive them in the story, which I can't imagine whether that makes it easier or worse to write stories, but I think makes it more authentic and more engrossing for a reader, because now you really do feel like that character is doing the things that are being described. And so for me, that's exciting.
I think that's also the most important thing. I've come to realize that more and more. You can have a great location, great scenes, great action, but if there's no character behind everything, what's the point? I mean, what do you remember about Lord of the Rings? The One Ring? Well, sure, but I remember Frodo. I remember Aragorn.
See, there's definitely something to it. It's interesting because as I look through various authors and books, I am one of those people who I find myself drawn to the world that is created for me to imagine. I love rules. I love landscape and kind of the way that things work. So one of the things I love about the Sword of Dragon series is the way that you use magic. From the first scene, as I started reading Rise of Forgotten, that first scene where you see Qatar go through it, actually first cast. Not necessarily successfully, but first doing magic. And I had that moment of going like, oh, okay, what's this about? And it didn't necessarily explain it in depth at that first scene, but you get a taste of it. And then it comes through and you start talking more and more about how it's about the items and weapons and things like that, more so than just the individual just, boom, cast something. Yeah. And that, to me, was really interesting and different from many fantasy-type books that I've read. So that's something I'm engrossed by. I always go back to one of the book series I've loved was the Pern series,
yes.
Dragon Riders of Pern, because I loved the way it was set up with social structure, Harper halls and the different halls and things like that. It was something I just gravitated to. So that's a thing that I look for in a book where character is bonus, I guess, because I do want to like my characters.
Or love to hate them.
Well,
depending on the character.
Well, oh, absolutely, no. A character that I can truly feel like I have a valid emotion towards, not because they've done something that is just like out of character or whatever like that, but if they truly are nefarious, if they are the heartfelt character that I can get behind because they are trying to do the right thing, even if their outcome may be flawed or something like that. Those I do love, the heart in a character and things, but at the same time, a villain that makes you really look at them like, whoa, that ain't right. Although even then, in the modern sense of the villains and the antagonists in many cases, that you can at least understand their motivation if you don't agree with what they're trying to accomplish. That I like. I like that a lot. I think in the Marvel Universe and Thanos and stuff like that, the way the movies portrayed them. I like that aspect, but... No. We'll get to that. But, so for you guys, because you were talking about having the general plot and breaking it down into the chapters and stuff like that, and basically building that outline for your story, at least from yours, John. And I say, Becca, is that similar for your creative process, or?
I think when I wrote Bloody Notes, what I kind of started with, I started with actually just writing the opening scene, and then from there I was like, okay, I have an idea of where I want this to go, and wrote what would be the back blurb on the back of the book. From there, I built up a longer summary that was a more detailed of where I wanted everything to go, and then from there, I just continued writing.
Okay, so it just kind of was a cascading down from the general, okay, that's going to be the overall.
The general idea.
Yep.
A little bit more bulky.
And now I'm just going to go. Yep, I'm done. I got it. Interesting. Nice. Well, that's what's cool, right? Because everybody has their own creative process. And it sounds like the fact that you're going through a process now of editing.
Very different process.
Well, because, in big authors, big publishing houses and things like that, they tend to have resources of professional editors, right? People who spend their time going through people's works of art to do everything from the minor corrections, the
copy editor.
Yeah, the copy editor is someone who's going to say, that is not how you spell that. Or, did you mean to go the? And, those kind of things that just people do. Because when you're creating, tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of words kind of putting together into a story, I can only imagine the kind of things that you just end up missing, right? Because you're just putting the content down. So
it's better to get an outside perspective. Beta readers, if you can't afford an editor. I'm poor, so I can't afford to hire an editor. But if I could, I would hire an editor in a heartbeat, because we fill in gaps. We as people fill in gaps in everything, in our memories and everything. You're not processing everything that's happening around you. You don't see the printer over there because your mind already knows it's there, so it's filling it in. Same with as a writer, as you're going through your book, you know what words are supposed to be there. So you're not going to see the errors unless you come back years later, which is what happened with me with these books.
Well, I was going to say, because it's one of those interesting things, and it's something I ran into, I say a handful of times when I read the books originally, that I would catch something, right? Some little thing that I was just like, oh, I think that's misspelled, or a punctuation or something like that, where I'd just be like, oh, okay.
A couple of books I've had that. Professionally printed books, and I'm going through them like,
yep.
They just repeated the same two words over twice.
Like, was that intentional? Well, it's something that, for me, actually getting to know authors, I always wondered, like, should I say anything? No, they must know this, right?
Say something, please.
Say something, because we probably don't know.
So that's something, especially for those who are doing self-publishing. Hey, everybody out there, if you happen to read a book and you love the author and... whatever, send them an email.
Please.
Make it nice. Just be like, hey, I noticed this on this page.
Yeah.
Just heads up.
as he said, be nice. Don't say, you idiot, you misspelled that. Just say, hey, I think I caught this error. And I'd be like, oh, thank you. I'll fix that in the next edition.
Well, that's the funny part, because I have had the opportunity to at least see one of your books, if not, now, have I seen all of them now? Your process of going through and editing, and what we had talked about, the shucks, should have brought that version along to show on air.
Yeah.
But basically, the original copy, a printed one that you had gone through again, reading and making notes in of things you wanted to adjust.
Every time I found a mistake or something that needed to be rewritten or changed, I would dog-ear the top of that page. And for book one, I would say all but maybe 20 pages were dog-eared. It was bad. It was horrible.
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
Well,
because that corner of the book was twice
yeah,
as thick.
Yeah, each dog ear causing it to just grow and grow. Did that like work as almost like this feeling of foreboding about, yes, look at the work that I'm creating for myself, and oh gosh.
He was scared to go on to the second book after
first,
finishing that one. He's like, oh my god, how much more editing I'm going to have to do for the next.
It's going to take forever. But thankfully, so I wrote Rise of the Forgotten, then I wrote Burning Skies, and then the York War campaigns. And then I went back, and as I'm editing them, book one was horrible. Book two was about half as many edits, and then Orc War campaigns, I barely had to do anything to it.
Yeah, that one was barely touched.
So hopefully that's a
Are
sign that
you getting in a flow?
Maybe my writing's, I hope, getting better.
Well, that's one of the funny things. I think any author you talk to will. How did I put it? When I talked to, I think I've said it on air before, but when I talked to Jim about where I was finally reading some of his books, and I mentioned that I was only on like book 2 or 3 of Dresden Files, his comment to me was like, "Oh God, not that one. That one's terrible. God, I'm so much better now than I was then." And so I was chuckling because I was like, I'm enjoying it. What? Now, granted, I can also say now that I've basically finished all the Dresden Files other than the 2 side books, yeah, he got a lot better. And so now I can understand a little more so where that comes from.
That's one of the reasons I enjoy reading series, like the Harry Potter books. Every book was way better than the previous one, and I very much enjoyed the first book. It was very well written, considering it was her first novel. Well, even just was well written. And then watching her get better with each book, I'm like, this is awesome.
Well, yeah, it's funny because for me, it's such a almost like I don't notice because I'm still just continuing the story, and it just feels. And I probably like don't even think about it because I'm just thinking I've now enjoyed this series so much that I'm continuing into it like, oh, I love this, and I just continue to love it. Not looking at it objectively to say like, actually, it is better written. Look at this. It's much tighter this time. No wonder I'm enjoying the pacing better this time. Versus authors that I've also read, like, the whole Wheel of Time series where it gets the ebb and flow kind of experience I've had where it starts brilliant and fast-paced and fun, and then it hits a whole lot of middle what's going on that lulls and just like, I like this series, but man, why did it take me twice as long to read this book than it did any of the others? And then it finished at another high note where I was like, hey, thank you, Brandon Sanderson, for fixing this.
I usually don't stick around in those books, unfortunately, because I'm just like, I'm so done. When is it like going to get interesting again?
I have gone through 2 of those. Like I said, the Wheel of Time series was tough, but I hit it at the right time where everything was out, and then Brandon was just about to start taking over what he was doing. And so I was able to start reading his shortly thereafter, and it picked back up a lot at that point. And so, I mean, there were like 4 or 5 books in there that were a little like, whew, this is rough. But then the worst one I ever had, and don't judge me, I was young and didn't know better, was when I read L. Ron Hubbard's Mission Earth series. Sorry, because it's 10 volumes of L. Ron Hubbard just... It's sci-fi. Started out well. Like, again, it was one of these ones where the first 2 or 3 books were solid. Books 4, 5, 6, and 7 were garbage. 8 was, like, almost redeemable, and then 9 and 10 were solid. And I was just like, God! And I struggled through that middle series. Anyhow. Side notes and things. But yeah, so it's actually really cool to hear that you have found less and less edits as you've gone through, that if nothing else, the flow or feel for your writing has kind of picked up.
And for me, so I guess it comes down to personal taste, but one of the things I enjoyed, it's good when you can enjoy your own work, I hope, right? Not arrogant.
I don't know. I wonder why people listen to me for 2 hours a week every week.
The York War campaigns was extremely character driven, and a lot of that came from a lot of personal experience too, but I think it made for much more interesting stories for me. However, you were mentioning how you like things like structure and how the world is built and everything.
Yep.
That is one of the new things I want to point out for my new books. Maps. The maps are in the books. Woohoo!
So you know where you're going.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, and I'll pull this into the stream so people can see it, make sure I'm on there. So it is available right now, right? As we get into this, just a heads up. But
yes,
as of Friday, finally, yeah.
So on Amazon, you can look up. I think easiest if you look for what,
Jon
right?
Wasik.
Yeah, look for Jon Wasik.
Jon, not J, no H.
Yes, JONWASIK.
Yes.
If you look up Jon Wasik on Amazon right now, you can go through and you can find all of his books.
They have not been linked yet for between the Kindle and print, so you'll see both, as well as the old ones are still listed, even though they're not for sale anymore.
Yes, no, they did come down, but you can see the old covers. You can see the new artwork and stuff that's in there now.
See how much better it is.
So here I've got
appealing.
I've got up on the stream for everyone to see the Rise of the Forgotten, so you can see the front cover of that, and actually it's pretty cool. I like that in the Amazon part of it. You can kind of get the first preview, seeing all the chapters and such, and chuckling as I look through. And it's always weird for me to see when I go to the Acknowledge It page and I see like my own name. Don't know how to feel about that. But here you can see there are maps. Yeah. Maps, which actually goes out to credit to a friend of ours who drew these for you, which was great.
Really?
Yeah, so that is awesome.
And she absolutely demanded, I do not want my name in there. I'm like, but...
So it's not printed, but
yes,
we can give it on air. So ha.
Ha ha.
But yeah, so new maps, as well as you can go in there and read the first bits of the book itself. If you'd like to, just to see what it's about. So I recommend checking that out. And you have it both in... actually, I'm going to do my announcer voice now, as I'm going to read the back jacket for everybody out there. All right, for Rise of the Forgotten, the general quote on the top. I think I tried to do this for you once before, and I was trying to come up with the right emphasis as we were talking about like audiobook or such.
How to do, the audiobook.
But for the quote saying, amongst the stars lies dreams, and dreams of dreams. Amongst the stars lies life. All right. For over 3,000 years, the Sword of Dragons has remained hidden in the remote realm of Hallerite. Forged to end the catastrophic civil war of the dragons, it was feared by its creators and buried and forgotten. This is me trying to read real time. And this is going to be terrible because names. So,
do you want me to correct or?
Oh, feel free to correct, because my own mind does weird things with names when I read them. In fact, I'll go through books and I'll go back and actually read the word, and you're like, that is not how I've been pronouncing it in my head for half this book. And at that point, I'm usually ruined and can't fix it. It says, when the rogue mage Kalar learns of the sword and searches for it, only the fledgling wizard Dalin recognizes the threat that she poses. With his pleas for help ignored by the wizards and the prince, Dalin's only hope is to recruit the forgotten outcast warrior Cardin Katar, but yeah. Katar.
You did
so close. Cardin Dalin scramble to find the sword and its guardian dragon before Kalar, but she is already ahead of them. If they fail, a new age of darkness will begin. See, this is one of those things where, like, if I ever tried to actually voice it or something, I'd have to have that, the phonetic, listing for every name. So I could be like, which actually, that is something I love when books have that in the end, especially
Maybe
fantasy books.
Next time.
Sorry, this is also what I do, not to add more work to anybody, but is when in kind of that appendices part of it, they talk about, how to pronounce, especially when they have like spell titles or city titles and things like that are fantasy anyways, and so they kind of can have some interesting pronunciation and spellings, especially when there's other, like when you have elven influence or other races and things like that put them in there. I love that because I can go back and be like, I is so wrong.
Apparently we've been mispronouncing Voldemort wrong all these years.
What?
Wait,
what?
Apparently in the last years, so maybe the last 2 years, J.K. Rowling came forth and said, that's actually not how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Oh, gosh.
The T is supposed to be silent at the
Voldemort?
end.
Yeah, you told me
Voldemort.
that.
What? Voldemort? What? Why would anybody know that?
Right?
Why? That is the...
It doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Get a little bit of black in her there.
I forget who we were talking to, where they're like, I think the reason they did that... No, it was someone at work. They're like... Well, so he probably wanted it to, or she probably wanted it to be Voldemort, but Tom Riddle. It's supposed to be I am Lord
Needed
Voldemort.
the T in there somewhere.
So just so that, yeah. I'm like, that's a stretch, but okay. You're the author.
I mean, so it's funny because that's one of those things that I think comes up in fandom as a whole. When it comes with any IP, any kind of thing that we like as geeks. I'd be curious to hear your guys' response. When you have whole groups of people who say things a certain way, pronounce it, becomes kind of the norm, do you think, gosh, this is so weird to say, but when an author then comes out with something like this with Voldemort, saying, no, that everybody's wrong, this is the way it should be, is that like an easy pill to swallow? Because as you hear me butchering the names...
But the problem with J.K. Rowling is she waited how long to finally say
true.
something. That's
what,
like
20 years?
If you were a part of helping to produce the movies, why didn't you say something
like
the first
fix that
time
right.
when they started pronouncing the name?
Oh my
in the
gosh,
movies?
no question, because that's being perpetuated by the first times you hear it voiced. Let alone, now here's my question with that, because I know the first time I got anything Harry Potter was through the audiobooks.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I'm pretty sure in the
yeah.
audiobooks it also says Voldemort.
It does,
So
because
she
I bought
should have
the
corrected
first
like
one.
super early on
Rollins,
if that was
you
wrong.
have no case in this. You are wrong. You had every opportunity to fix the world and you chose not to. So I disagree. You are wrong.
Sorry, it's Voldemort for
Yep, it is Voldemort. The fandom has won on that one. You had every chance.
It is interesting, though, when... So we were talking before the show, too, about people taking stories in fiction and IPs personally.
Yes.
I had a reader when book 2 came out. I'm not going to spoil much. You can read on the back that there are necromancers in the second book.
Okay.
But I had a reader who was livid with me because she was mad at how I treated... or how the characters treated necromancy versus how they were treating another form of actual resurrection versus necromancy. And she was like, how can they treat one differently from the other? And she was pissed at me.
Hey.
It's like, but they're very different things. Necromancy and actual resurrection are extremely different things. But I couldn't win the argument with her.
So that's interesting. Wow. Ooh, I'm curious how that goes out and how that feels to get that kind of feedback. You see, I'm challenged also because nobody really yells at me for how I do my show. They just kind of accept that this is me and this is what I do. So, I don't have any like standing creativity. The most I have is a couple of YouTube videos I made where people are like, could you like next time make sure the microphone is this or that? That's like the most I get, right? Everybody else here knows that when I do it live, they're like, well, yeah, it broke in the middle of the show again. And so... Right? Anybody who watches the show, they know that happens, and so they've kind of accepted and gone with it. But to have that kind of feedback where someone has a very opinionated response to something you've come up with, I'm curious because I always invite that kind of criticism. I want to know. Did I do something that you disagree with? Should I revisit something I thought of? So how did you take it to have that kind of interchange? And did you directly was this someone you knew and talked to, or was it okay? Because I wasn't sure if it was through an email or.
Yeah, it was actually in person. It was apparently someone's criticizing your hair.
Oh gosh! So the funniest thing is the people who criticize my hair are the people who've known me the longest. Like, I posted a thing on social media today that showed me 7 years ago.
Yeah, with the short hair.
People who maybe didn't know me back then and look at me like, yeah, because I commented on it. Who's that guy?
I saw the post.
So okay, Grandpa Hando, but when you had that kind of discussion with them, how did that feel?
It was weird because I've never had that kind of a discussion about my books before. It was kind of cool, but at the same time a little frustrating because I'm like, I thought I was clear in how they were different, but did I fail? What happened here? What?
Well, so here's one of the challenges, because I don't recall from the books themselves if you went into detail about the differences between them in your world. Or did you kind of take for granted, because this happens to be in common life, that people generally understand the difference? Like us being fans of fantasy, sci-fi, things like that, all these kind of geekdom worlds that we live in. You tell me resurrection and necromancy, and I'm going to think very different things just by the words.
Right.
Necromancy, I'm tending to think you reanimate the dead, where resurrection is actually bringing them back to life.
Right.
Actual life versus animated corpse.
Restored life.
Right.
That's kind of how I visualize it. And I can even see where some necromancy could provide a level of intelligence to what's been reanimated, but it's still not life. Where for me, resurrection without the continuation of any additional magic or any kind of anything is going to continue on life. You have brought life back and it now will continue the way it should have. Where necromancy seems to be tied to it's not natural and will continue to require this something to keep it going.
Right.
At least that's my own mind. That's my definition of necromancy.
And that was my assumption. It was a little bit of both. I mean, I never explicitly said in the books, this is this and this is this in any one scene. It's, you find out about the resurrection in book 1, and you kind of get a feel that they're alive, they're back, their souls are in their bodies, they're fine. Then in book 2, you have necromancers, and they're undead, they're skeletons in some cases.
Well, because also the necromancy isn't that, if I'm recalling it correctly, that's being led by necromancers who are actually putting forth the effort to keep these things going.
Right. Yeah.
And thus, I see it very different. So, in that conversation, you kind of already alluded to the fact that you did not win the conversation. So, you were not able to sufficiently explain the difference for that individual.
Right. I tried. I explained what the differences are, and she's like, but that's still, that they should be treated the same.
That's interesting. No, I'm enjoying hearing about the interchange.
I think I might be seeing what her point of view is that in both cases there's something that is dead and is brought back to life in one way or another, and that's something that goes against nature, and that's probably what her argument was.
Well, and that'd be not trying to assume what the person's motivations were, but I could see in general someone of a religious inclining or something like that having thoughts or concerns about any of that. Especially because religious-wise, resurrection has a very specific connotation towards it.
Darth Vader. Wait, what? No, wait, that's not resurrection. That's something else.
In certain...
Stargate. I was thinking of Stargate. A quote from Stargate that was misquoted just now.
I was going to say, you were getting me because I was trying to still talk as I was trying to do the playback through all of the Star Wars universe of when did Vader resurrect?
No, I
don't
was
remember
thinking
that.
Of a totally different scene. Anyway.
Cross your fandoms. No, remember that? You remember that episode of Stargate when they went to, the Empire and?
Actually, the Emperor was apparently resurrected in the comics, but that's besides the point.
Emperor. Well, he had clones, but anyhow, that's a whole aside.
Yes.
Well, no, but I find that interesting because for me, I would almost want to take that as joy that someone cared enough about the story that you were telling.
Yeah.
That they wanted explanation, they wanted understanding further, that they had a reaction to something you presented, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, the best I'm going is I hope people are entertained by the shows that I put out there. And
are you not entertained?
Right? Well, actually, I swear. Well, so my challenge is I used to be, my old show, Octail and Hordak vs. the World, one of our personalities, Octail, had a ability to bring up things in a way people would just be like, what? And so we had a lot of feedback. Not always positive, but a lot of feedback.
Very passionate feedback.
Yes, and it was really interesting because you at least knew people cared and people were watching, right?
That's true.
And so one of the challenges is when people generally just enjoy what you're doing, you don't often get enough of that response that lets you know that there's something to look at. Mm-hmm. And so that, to me, sounds like a great story. To at least get that kind of, somebody read that and was like, hey, I got something I want to say about that.
That is an awesome feeling. Yeah.
So, but with that kind of
frustrating,
feedback,
but awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you find yourself trying to take or incorporate any of that into your edits, or was that before or after?
No, it was long before. I honestly hadn't really thought about it while I was going through the edits. It was just something that came up recently again that I remembered after I'd finished editing. So no, I didn't fix anything in there for that.
Well, because we talked about the edits specifically, we had brought up the idea of the grammatical and the spelling and punctuational kind of edits, which are just, like you said, copy editing.
Yeah.
What other kind of editing did you find yourself doing throughout the series?
There are cases where I rewrote entire sentences or paragraphs.
Or cut them out.
I did cut. There was one example. I forget which book it was. I cut
was
2 paragraphs. I think book 2 as well. I cut some out. But I cut 2 full paragraphs out because they were adding absolutely nothing to it. They was just slowing down the story. It wasn't giving any detail that was even really relevant.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it might have been interesting detail for someone who...
Same discussion like with dresses.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm reading this and I'm like, that has nothing to do with that. And there was also a lot of story flow where I had words arranged in a way that I'm sitting there like, why? So
It makes it
rearranged
difficult to read it.
words.
When
yeah.
something doesn't kind of come off the tongue as well and such like that as when you first put it down.
And then I also had those 2 issues that I constantly ran into, and I think I've posted about this on Facebook and my blog. One was where I say something that I'd already just like established.
Okay.
So every time I'd see that, I'd hear in my voice Severus Snape going, obviously, and then I'd cut it.
Nice. One of those. Oh,
Sitting there on the couch as he's going through it, and he just goes, obviously, and picks up the pen and crosses it out.
oh, that's good. So it's actually happening, like as he's going through the book, saying,
Yes.
"Yep, did it again."
Yep. And then there was another issue that I did a lot, especially in books 1 and 2, where the characters began to do something. They started to do something. Carden began to get up. Carden began to do this. And I'm like, that's not very action forward or positive forward or moving language. So I would change it to Carden
got up.
But
using more eloquent word.
Yeah.
Tried. Not
Yeah.
always succeeded. But yeah.
Carden
it's like,
rose with.
Yeah.
Yes, with
So-
deference. No, I got you. No, that's interesting because, I mean, it's, thankfully, in my own mind, I don't have any experience writing because I don't believe I'd be very good at it. I'm much better at suggesting how other people do things. But, my editing was all consisted of writing papers and stuff for school and things like that and thinking I was brilliant at the time and then finding out later not so much. So it's neat to kind of hear how you're going through it and the kind of things you were looking at. Do you talked about the first book having dog ears like throughout, and so that there's a lot of things to do in there. Were most of those edits kind of the copy side, or did you find a lot of that was the obviously and the kind of like, no, that doesn't make sense that way?
For book 1, it was probably about a quarter of it was copy edits, and then the rest of it was all the other stuff. The requirement the need for copy editing seemed to reduce as well as everything happened. And thinking about the Orc War campaigns, it was probably only about 12.5 copy edit issues that I found versus the 2 or 3 dozen other things I had to fix. So it was...
Well, and you did this kind of for all 3 books together, right? It's not like you finished book 1 and then you started book 2 and then you went back and edited book 1, and this is something where you had completed all 3 of these books and then you went back and said, I really want to go back in there and do some things. What was that motivation to first decide you wanted to do edits, that you felt you needed a second version?
A lot of it started with something that sounds simple. My books were not selling, mostly because I was getting positive feedback from everyone who read it, with one exception, but yeah, that was personal based. Anyway, and I'm sitting there like, everyone who reads it enjoys it, but I'm not getting anyone to give it a try. What's going on? So I started doing a bunch of market research, because my advertising campaigns on Amazon, I was getting like 1 or 2 clicks at most, and probably more than that, but no purchases from my last ad campaign, maybe 2 or 3. But I'm like, what's going on? So I started doing marketing research, and I came across several articles, plus I had a suggestion from someone of the same thing. This one author wrote about how he was having the same issue. He was getting positive feedback from his book from the few people who gave it a try. And so he hired someone. He had money to hire someone to research it and look out into what was going on. It's like, wait, these are historical mysteries? Like, yeah. Look at your cover, dude. It looks like a thriller. He's like, so what he deduced was that people were seeing this as a thriller, checking out the back cover and going, this isn't what I want, and not buying it. And then people who wanted historical mystery would look at the cover and go, not my thing.
Gotcha. So it was that...
The cover was the first thing I wanted.
Yeah, I don't know the right term for it, other than, for me, the thing that came to mind was curb appeal. But
Yeah, the eye catch.
yeah, it's what's first getting you to see... Because admittedly, right, one
Draw
of the big
your
things...
audience.
Yeah, how do you bring someone in?
Your audience, specifically.
Knowing that the cover is important as heck.
Yeah. They say never judge a book by its cover, but everyone does.
Well, but the cover is what's going to make you pick it up in the first place,
Exactly.
unless you already know the author was recommended or something like that.
Right.
When you're just at a bookstore looking, I mean, honestly, you're going to see everything from how is it first put in front of you, you know, the cover art that you see if it's on a display, to when it's on a shelf,
Yeah.
you know, what are you seeing on the side that's going to be like, oh, why do I want to pick this book up versus the one next to it?
Yeah.
And so that's partly the title, obviously, right? You read it and you're like, oh, hey, let alone what is the imagery that you're seeing.
Yeah.
So basically, I remember because I was around for when you were coming up with your first covers and things like that, and
Christian did a good job. Don't get me wrong.
oh no, I thought they were solid,
Yeah.
and I liked what they were doing. Admittedly, seeing the new ones, I'm a big fan, and I do like the direction you've gone for the artwork in it, as well as, like you said, adding the maps and things like that, so we can now bring it together. Because that's another, admittedly, challenge I have is, while I do know geography well, my head and what I read, putting things together versus what's actually there, don't always match. And I mess up names so often, city names, things like that, character names. I'll be like, oh, we're here. Wait, you weren't there. Oh, that's because it's not you. Things that I do just as a poor reader, because I tend to just blaze through things. No, so that's interesting. So partly what got you started was realizing you wanted to get you wanted to reattach. You wanted to be able to put yourself out there and say, hey guys, you might have missed this when it came back before, but check out my books.
Yeah. And then, I was like, well, if I'm going to do a second edition, I knew I was going to put the maps in too. I wanted to get an edition with the maps in. And then I'm like, well, if I'm going to all this, I might as well do some edits. It could probably use a little bit of fixing. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
So starting with that nice little, like, well, I'm going to put it out there anyways. Let me just look through for those obvious spelling mistakes and stuff. Yeah, a couple things, right? There's a handful in there.
Right. And then as I'm reading through it, I'm like, oh. And what's interesting is my first attempt at editing, which was earlier this year, very early this year, I did it electronically before I did any print copies, and I fixed a lot there. I thought I had gotten everything then, so that when I finally had the print editions, and I ordered it 3 or 4 months ago, I think is when I ordered the first.
So this was your first, like, oh, I've already edited, I'm good, I got the new covers. Now I'm ready to do it. Let me get a print version so I can have it in hand and check it out.
Yeah, and then I'm sitting there like, ooh, I missed that.
So that's when, like, the in-depth decision to edit started coming through.
Yeah.
When you had it in hand, and did you just start, like, marking it in your book as you saw it?
Mm-hmm.
Yup.
and I even remember at one point I turned to you and I asked, should I keep doing this, or should I just accept how it is and just go for copy edits? And she's like, well, you've already started, and it's going to be a second edition, so you want it to be significant and worth buying. I'm like, yeah. And that's one of the marketing...
Yeah, and he was already, like, probably a good few millimeters through it, and I'm like, you don't want the first little bit to be really, really good.
Why does this suddenly flow, and then now it's like, what's going on?
But, yeah, and it all comes out well, because one of the most important things I think I've learned is that you have a lot of self-published authors who they make a living through it by volume. They publish one book a month. That's insane. I don't know how I could do that. Ooh. But some of them, I'm not going to discount them all. Some of them come up with some pretty good products, but they're not the best products that they possibly could be. And I'm like, if someone who's reading wants to spend this much money, especially for the print edition, I want it to be worth their while. I want it to be a solid product, not just a good story. I want the entire product to be good. So that was kind of the focus I had there towards the end. Is I want this to make the best thing I possibly can, so that the fans are getting what they deserve.
No, that's good to hear. I mean, it's interesting to hear that process and how that came about. Essentially, how you got into just starting to edit and go through. So we've been hearing a lot of, like, how you started and got into it. For you, Becca, on the side, kind of watching the process happen, how much involvement did you have?
Lots.
I honestly don't think so, but okay.
Beyond inspiration, but like actually...
My personal experience was the marketing part of it, because not book-wise, but helping my mom out with the marketing from her own job, I kind of had an eye for that. So I was like, your book's good, sweetie, but
but nobody can find it.
We need to do something about the cover. Mm-hmm. And then Muffy was the one that suggested, your book is about dragons. You need a dragon on the cover. I'm like, yeah, you have a dragon in a way by having the scales, but they need to actually see the dragon. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of helping him finding the right images. And
I do want to shout out, even though I've never actually talked to this person before, the artwork I found on Shutterstock and bought the rights for, I found all these amazing dragon images and fantasy images from an artist named Vuk Vukostic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Vukostic.
And we keep on saying he, but we're not entirely
Just
sure.
an assumption
Feel
based
of
on
it
Vuk.
feels he.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Vukostic. Yeah. Amazing artwork, and going forward, I think most of my, if not all, my cover art for the Sword of Dragon series is going to be ones that I purchased from him because they fit very well.
Oh yeah, no, like I said, I love the artwork. I remember when you were first kind of teasing out a few options and kind of came to me even with, hey, what do you think of these couple? That, no, these really do stand out. I think it was a good find. So that's really cool. But also in that process then...
Oh yeah, and a lot of the proofreading of the covers, I'm like, you're not being consistent with your text. This text on the first cover is perfect. The second cover, for some reason, all the letters are the same size. On the third one, you have the same feel as the first one, but for some reason they're bold. So you need to be consistent, babe.
It's like something about
Driving me
professional.
nuts.
Keep it together. That's hilarious. No, that's good.
A lot of work went into reimagining the covers, and I owe a lot of the
Well, like you said, that
success
was a big part of the marketing push. How can I draw eyeballs to say, hey, you need to pick this up and look what's inside.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that makes sense. And equally, I was kind of curious for you, Beck, coming from seeing what Jon was going through, editing through all of his revisions. How has this made you look at what you've done for your own books?
I need to work on it. My stuff has been on the back burner for 2 years now. I had started working on the dress for the cover over 2 years ago when we were living back at Amley Apartments. And then we got engaged, and I'm like, well, this can wait until after the wedding.
Yeah,
and then after
priorities.
the wedding
Priorities.
got super busy, and it's like, when am I ever going to get around to this again?
No.
And now that we've kind of stopped everything in order to save money to go and get a house next year, it's like, well, now I have time. Let's do this.
Ah.
And it's like, as he's going through and editing, I'm like, I wonder if I should do another go through in mine. So I've been doing that as well. Trying to figure out what exactly I want to do for my cover art as well, because I had an idea and then that didn't really seem to work well. So I'm like, okay, I need to actually get my hands on some, because like what he did when he was first editing the cover arts was he found the images on Shutterstock, just did a quick crappy download of the image with all the copyrights still across it.
Just the quick idea of...
And quick and mocked up on it really quick to make sure that's what he wanted. So I did that. I stole a few images from Shutterstock, and like, I liked the idea of this pose, not necessarily the character and all that, because
getting the general layout.
Yeah, and got the general layout. And there was one girl specifically that she had several different steampunk looks and poses and everything that really worked for what I wanted to do. So I threw them all in there, quickly edited the hair. I'm like, that's the pose that I want. But being the model myself, I'm like, that gives me a slightly upper edge because it's not a look that's going to be on everyone's books.
Oh, yeah.
Because as I was going through, I would see this specific model over and over again, go to Amazon, look up steampunk books, and oh, hey, that's that model.
Oh,
That's
there you
that
go.
model. That's that model. I know her.
Yep.
And it kind of got frustrating. I was like, I want something that I know is going to be unique, completely unique, and no one's going to have it. So that...
Well, no, but that's an interesting process that you're going through, especially as you're talking about both of you figuring out covers. For people who aren't aware, Shutterstock being a stock artwork site where you can go essentially peruse and find artwork of various genres and types, find something you like, and if you do, pay for the rights to then use that in whatever form it is. And so using that as a way to kind of build templates and understanding and ideas of what in general you were after, essentially, so that you could lock down the thing and now you can create your own when you've got it all set.
There's some images from there that I will purchase as like the backgrounds and
Yeah.
pieces, but for the models themselves, I'm using myself and friends. If friends would be so kind as to, I will make the costumes for them.
That one of the advantages of being in the cosplay community and knowing people who like to dress up in funny costumes and look at
and get their
characters,
pictures taken and all
Right?
that good stuff.
So that'll be fun to see, let alone because I'll probably know many of them.
Probably.
So that'll be fun. No, that's cool. And sorry, I hadn't given the time, but mentioned it there about being steampunk and such. as we're getting, actually, we're going to take a break here.
Okay.
Play some music. I'm going to try something out where I'm going to play some Sean Beeson. I don't know if we've played him for a while. And he's got some fanciful music, so we'll see how that comes through. But we're going to take a break, play some music, come back, and then I want to ask a little more about your books.
Okay.
And so we can talk about kind of what kind of stories people can expect to see from you. So with that, you're listening to Show X on VTWProductions.com. We've got Jon and Rebecca Wasik with us and talking about their work here as authors and the books they've got and what they've been doing. So we'll be back right after this in about... Oh, this is a short one, like 2.5 minutes. So this will be a nice short, just long enough to run to the restroom and get some drinks.
Enough to get drinks.
All right, so we'll catch you guys right after this.
Send in your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com. You're listening to Show X on VTWProductions.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. All right, so I figured that after the break, we would sit here and talk a little bit more about, Beck, what your books and such are about and such. Since we teased that, kind of talked around, I got to talk a little bit up at the beginning of the show about what I've read with Rise of Forgotten and the Sword of Dragon series for Jon. But Beck, I think people have heard just a little bit about steampunk and such, but what are who is your protagonist? What is your book focused on?
Well, the thing is, when I wrote the first book, it was kind of going to be a standalone.
Okay.
And then as I was finishing it, I was like, I really like these characters. I want to write more, but I don't know what to write. So I was trying to come up with some more steampunk ideas in order to continue on the ideas. So with the second book that's going to be coming out after, which I'm already getting ideas for, but I need to build it up a little more because having a hard time writing it. It's going to kind of involve the air kraken. So, yeah, some of that mythology is going to be coming in. I need to do some research on the mythological creature, the kraken, and somehow figure out a way to convert it to air.
So I've got, just hearing that, like, I was like, what? The kraken in the air. Because that leapt to me both as being either a totally uninformed, but because admittedly, I don't think I've read a single actual steampunk book. I know I'm aware of the culture, been around, got to see steam powered drafts, stuff like that, but have not actually read any of the steampunk books that are out there, and I know there's a bunch. But my first thought when I heard air kraken was either an actual entity, monster, something like that flying around that, almost like a multi-headed dragon or something like that. But the other thought I had that to hit me first was almost it being like the myth of the air kraken, but actually having it being some group's airship that they've built up that is kind of mysterious that way. That's just what hits my mind. No, you don't have to reveal a thing. Please do not take my random birds for anything. But
the series name is going to end up being the Leviathan Mysteries. There's a group that, unfortunately, we're not going to learn much about the group itself, which kind of, I like the cloak and dagger kind of feel of it. That's called Leviathan, that wants to get their hands on the air kraken in order to control the world, basically, in their own way.
He who controls the kraken controls the skies.
And it's like, how exactly can I tie that into my first book, which is a steampunk retelling of Jack the Ripper?
Ooh.
So I'm like, how does this fit in exactly? Because not too many spoilers. There's automatons that are going about and killing and things like that. And I'm like, how does that fit in? And so I thought, well, the person that was behind the creation of these automatons, this was their way of basically auditioning to get into the Leviathan organization. And in the second book, we're actually introduced to his teacher. That taught him how to make exactly the automatons. So that's the more foot in the door to who exactly Leviathan is and why exactly they're so uppity and all. You get to
learn some motivations and the societal constraints that built it.
It's more learning in the second book than in the first book. The first book is just kind of introduction to the characters more. The main characters, which are Vanessa Hecate, who is a very, very brilliant young woman that grew up with her father in airships. She knows airships. She loves mechanics. She's the biggest engineer and airhead that I could ever come up with. And she doesn't like society's terms of this is what a proper young lady should be. You need to be in a corset. You can't speak too loud and all these little things. And she's like, fuck that.
Did you make a steampunk Kaylee? Is this what you got for me? Is this what you've got for me? An airship Kaylee who's keeping everything going and building everything in the skies?
Kind of, almost. And then her employer is Leon von Hohenheim, who is a very, very, very high-class man, but is kind of quiet on the side, a detective, and does all this dirty work for the queen for some of the more disgusting cases that come up under Scotland Yard.
The one who's going to be going after the Ripper-esque events.
And ends up with the Ripper case when they're like, okay, we don't know what to do with this guy anymore. You get to deal with him.
He's Batman.
Basically. And
it's steampunk. I can imagine all of the gadgets.
When all this started, it actually started out as a role play between a friend of mine and I. And we're like all excited. We're like, yeah, we really want to do this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write up the prompt for this and we're going to get started. And it never took off. So I asked him, I was like, can I use this character? And he's like, yeah, he's basically Batman. So yes, he is a steampunk Batman in the case. But yeah, there are going to be some major losses of characters coming up. And it also takes place over
about
several
to Games
years.
of Thrones it.
A little bit.
Can't wait till you read book 3 of Sword of Dragons.
It's going to take place over several years, because the first book, obviously, with it taking place around Jack the Ripper, takes place 1888. The next book is going to take place about 3 years later.
Okay.
Once everyone's recovered, you think everything's fine again, and then
the Leviathan.
You realize that there's an underlying thing that's going on with the people in London that's kind of helping to stir up Leviathan.
And it's interesting, too, because we've been working together on some of the research, because trying to figure out what to do with book 2. There's a lot of interesting things that actually did happen around that time frame that they were like, ooh, we could work that into the story.
Which is, sorry. Which was kind of the main thing. It's like, I want to use some historical events and build off of that in order to make it like this is the branch out from actual history.
Well, one of the beautiful things I have always enjoyed about the idea of steampunk as a whole is it is a reimagined historical type of world that still harkens back to what really happened, but with this twist of technology accelerating, but along the line of steam engines and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I love the idea and the kind of the feel you get of you can have laser guns and things like that in a steampunk world, but it's just how they're powered and put together to do it, where they're more like Tesla guns and things to that effect. And
I kind of have that in kind of introduction to things like that. In the first one is one of the characters creates I forget what I called it, but it basically like projects lightning in a way, and it's very powerful and scares the crap out of Vanessa, and she's like, shit.
Pa! And so so there's a curiosity of mine, because I know, and actually for both of you, and this is fun because we've got fantasy and steampunk as the genres that your books are basically representing. For each of you, when you're in that creative process and you're trying to come up with, be it a new spell or type of way of using magic or new technology or something that's being explored in the steampunk world, how much of it are you relying on what we've all known from fantasy or from kind of the steampunk world that's there, and how much has been something you've created yourself that was solely kind of like your addition to those genres, like your new technology or your new spell or way of tying magic together?
For me, there's a device that Vanessa creates, and she calls it the Wind Rider, and it is heavily based off of Jim Hawkins' Solar Surfer from Treasure Planet.
Okay.
Just steam powered. So I was like, okay, how do I take that look and design and try to figure out how steam exactly is going to power it instead? So I talk about very vaguely, because it's not something that probably could actually be done. I mean, it probably could, but a lot more in depth than I would be able to. No. Well,
so I mean, it's like, still. I think
this
does
this and this does.
Yeah,
this,
no,
so
I think there's a piece to any of these fanciful worlds we get into that we would like to base them as close to a hard real, reality that could exist. Mm-hmm. But there's almost every one of them you have to give it some level of consolation that it doesn't, or else we would have done that, right?
Oh yeah.
That because I mean, most steampunk, the thing I see is like most of the dirigibles and stuff like that you get are, in all honesty, way too heavy for what's designed.
Yeah. To
actually fly.
And that's where Aether usually comes up.
It's right.
You start a lighter weight gas.
Something that people have come up with, right? That's how we get those. That's how we get, warp cores that are powered by whatever. That's how we get, we always have to have that one convenient change in the world that allows it to actually work. So that's a given. That's okay. But no, for me it's interesting to see, because I know in steampunk one of the great things you get to do is look at any modern technology or any thing that exists and just say, how can I reimagine that with steam as kind of the focus? And so that's very cool to hear. But for you, John, when it comes to like magic, because this is also kind of a crazy thing to me, fantasy's been done to death, right?
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, it is. I mean, in the sense that we know the majority of fantasy, when it comes to characters and the way people view a world, tend to be Tolkien-esque, right? They have some chain back to what Tolkien has imagined for things, or Dungeons and Dragons, because while similar, they have some very, very specific differences between them. And so every one of us is inspired, right? We all have things that we've reached back to that tend to influence what we make. What have you come up with in your world that you feel is like uniquely yours?
In a lot of ways, what I like to do is take a fantasy trope and kind of turn it on its head, or make it different but still keep it familiar, which is a challenge. But for instance, one of the most common fantasy tropes is you have a dragon in a cave who's evil and hoarding treasure. Well, in this case, I have a dragon in a cave protecting the most powerful weapon in the universe from evil. So I took the trope and I'm like, and flip it on its head. So when it comes to magic, it was a matter of adapting it to how I pictured the way magic works in this universe, which a lot of it comes from. There's part intellectual, part spiritual, part energy, and I will say that Star Wars: The Force had some influence on it, as well as some of the video games I've played that were fantasy based and how the mechanics work for the magic in that. But it all has to kind of come together. So maybe even Stargate, some of the later seasons of Stargate, where Daniel gets some interesting powers just from knowledge and evolution. So I guess there's a lot. There's no one influence. For mine,
absolutely. No, we have tons.
It came together to create a very unique, at least I hope, what everyone people consider, and I know very unique is kind of a weird way to put it.
Well, again, this is a challenge in these genres. It's going to be a challenge for anything to be different, right? Because at the same time, you don't want to be so different that you're not really the fantasy people know or want.
Right, because then they'll go away from you.
Yeah, you don't want to be so different that your steampunk is no longer steampunk, it's now modern or something like that, right? So there's a balance, and I can understand, because there's a reason people come to your genre. But I have always seen that as something where it's one thing to tell a story in a universe that people already know and understand. Now you're just focused on the characters and the story you're telling. It's another when you branch out and push that little bit extra to say, but how is this mine? And that's what I've definitely seen with pieces of what I've experienced in the Sword of Dragon series, and why I'm now really like driving to want to experience what's in your steampunk world.
You might have a volunteer for a beta reader, babe.
Well, and we could probably find you some beta readers. Well, and as Hando puts out there in the IRC saying, my hometown's nickname is PA in PA is Steamtown. I'm way steampunk. And so others who will have to, reach out and catch your first book and look forward to the next.
I'm hoping, but time is of the essence here, hoping to have it out by the end of the year, but
Ooh.
That's very pushing it.
January then, if it comes
out.
out.
Well, if not the end of the year, then hopefully the beginning of
we will make sure that everyone who listens to this show will know when it's available. So we will definitely put it out there. All right. No, very cool. So I'm trying to decide. We did want to potentially talk about some news and things like that outside of just getting into the books. I wanted to absolutely put it out there so that we can put a tie on kind of what's going on with the books. Like you said, you're working on yours to get it out. The good segue into before maybe the holiday season, before the end of the year, something for people to look at to for the steampunk world. Do you have a name for the series as a whole?
It's going to be the Leviathan Mysteries.
Is the whole series, not just the next book?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next book is Chaos Rises. And there's another theme that I have there is when I name a series, I like consistency. So some of the other series that I've read is either the titles are all one word or all two words.
Gotcha.
So my books are going to be all 2 words titles.
No, that makes sense. It rolls off the tongue and makes it known for any audience to kind of figure out, yep, that's the book.
Yep.
Absolutely. As John's looking at it like, wait a second.
Yeah, I'm kind of like pushing that on him. I'm like, you should do something like that. And he's like, nah.
It doesn't work.
We all have our own things. But no, it's funny because I saw you look over as you said that. No, that's great. But one of the things we were looking at doing, because John, for you, basically the orders are out now. It's live that people can buy all 3 of the edited books for Rise of the Forgotten, Burning Skies, and the Orc War campaigns.
Which is an anthology of short stories in the same universe. Takes place
so
between books 1 and 2.
We have the first 2 books, and that's why you gave it to me in that order. Versus the order of release, which is the way I then stacked it. And admittedly, these are the proof ones, but with the actual covers, so that you can see. And like I said, you can go to Amazon now and look for Jon Wasik, and you can find the books. So there's all 3 of them there. And you can check those out. But they're live now for people to order, both the print copy and the Kindle version, correct?
Yes.
Good. So people go out there, buy books. You can catch them now. We're talking about the option or opportunity that maybe for a moment here, you could kind of give people an introduction to the Sword of Dragons series and kind of from what you've been playing with. Kind of talk through it so that people don't have to hear my misrepresentation of the actual names and such in the book, and can actually read or hear how they should be pronounced.
Oh, I think we're talking about doing the prologue. Do you want me to do any more?
Oh, whatever you'd like into it. You were talking about doing a little bit of it, so feel free. Whatever.
Maybe just the prologue.
Okay, yeah. So just going to be a little moment of on-air read from Jon Wasik.
And now I'm like blushing, and I'm like, oh god, what do I do? Anyway, try to get into my audiobook voice.
Yes, audio
No.
voice.
Wow.
He's so embarrassed.
Don't overthink it.
Okay.
You can do it. Do it.
It was forged in desperation. The civil war between the Star Dragons and Dark Dragons had raged for millennia on worlds far and wide, in the void between stars, and in realms unknown to all but the most gifted. The Star Dragons had lost all hope. After thousands of years of war, their population had dwindled from tens of thousands to mere hundreds, and the Dark Dragons outnumbered them threefold. Hope came to them from a race known as the Vral, a powerful species whose very essence was magic. Desperate to stop the bloodshed, the Star Dragons allied themselves with the Vral to forge a weapon powerful enough to finally destroy their enemies. But the Dark Dragons learned of their plan. In a cataclysmic attack, they descended upon the Vral world and laid waste to every city in their frantic search for the forge. When all seemed lost, when the Vral world burned and millions had perished, the sword was completed, and a single Vral triumphantly took up the sword. With a single vengeful thought, he destroyed every single Dark Dragon, and finally ended the civil war. Terrified by the unfathomable power they had created, the Star Dragons and Vral decided the sword was too dangerous to keep for themselves. Realizing that the sword was indestructible, they turned to an isolated world of humans, Halorite. Unwilling to trust the monarchs of the Four Kingdoms, they approached the elders of the Wizards Guild and formed a pact. While the wizards wanted to bury the sword and to be forgotten for all time, the others knew it might someday be needed to fight back the darkness. The sword was hidden, and knowledge of its location was kept from all but a few. Only a handful of clues were left behind to guide those desperate enough, or foolish enough, to want to find it. For 3,000 years the sword remained hidden upon Halorite. None from the Four Kingdoms ever learned of its existence, while the wizards exiled themselves to a realm of their own creation. Wars raged and ended, society evolved, and life passed unaware of the incredible power that lay beneath the Alari Mountains. But the secret could not be kept forever. The Sword of Dragons would once again come into the light, and the keeper of the sword would be chosen.
Nice. See, now everybody you need to get in there. You need to hear what's going on with the Sword of Dragons. That is outstanding.
I got a message a year or two ago from a friend who had bought it and was reading it out loud to her daughter. And I guess after the prologue, her daughter goes, "I want to be the keeper of the sword." And she sent me that message, and I'm like,
I remember that.
Say those little moments of interaction where you just know you've reached out and touched somebody with your stories, which has got to be a great feeling.
yes.
No, that is very good. And it's nice. It's good to hear your voice actually speaking through it, because for me, again, I put my own translation on things, and it ain't so good.
Yeah.
So that is nice. You need to pursue the whole get the audiobook out there, Dan. That was nice.
Thank you.
All right, so I did want to give us some chance to talk not only about the books, which is important because everybody needs to go out and check out what you guys have been creating, but there's other things you've been creating and things that kind of go along with what the fans of the show and people here are generally into, because we here are all geeks and gamers.
Yeah.
And so, the looks you give.
No.
So something else that you guys have been doing for a bit now has been streaming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So people can follow along. What channel are you guys streaming on, and what is it that you guys provide?
Twitch.
We are on Twitch as, Legend Tinker, but the 2 E's in Legend are replaced with 3's.
Because that's our robot names.
Our steam
Steampunk.
power giraffe inspired robots.
So Legend Tinker?
Yes.
Legend Tinker.
Legend Tinker, everyone. You can follow on Twitch. And what can people look forward to if they follow your Twitch stream?
We do a lot of Minecraft usually. We found a fantastic land that is chock full of caves everywhere.
And lots of giant,
And we
extensive caves.
Yeah, we've expanded quite drastically all over our map, and we have places here, there, all over.
We usually come up with an idea of we want to build this, but we need the right location for it, so we explore to find that location, and then we do this massive building project.
out in the plains and found a whole bunch of horses and gathered them there. I'm like, yay! That was a project because I have built that on other servers like 2 or 3 times and they were always way too big. So I finally figured out the
proper size to
down.
actually be able to create it without getting overwhelmed.
Yes, and now that we actually have different kinds of wood blocks, makes it so much better too, because I did not realize that the hull was actually like on the outside a lighter color and on the inside is a lot darker.
Ooh.
Which makes it a lot difficult when the only wood that you have to work with is oak.
Yes.
So now that we have birch, the outside is birch and the inside is a dark oak to give it that contrast. So it looks a lot more accurate now compared to before.
I say, so you guys are creating. So are you in creative mode, or are you actually like?
No, it's still survival mode. We still have monsters and crap that we have to deal with.
But we have done creative mode for other projects in single player.
Yes, in single player we are doing our own little projects. He's working on builds for his story. I'm working on builds for my story.
Oh, so you guys are each using the Minecraft engine and world to basically create 3-dimensional representations of your own books, of the things that you're creating in story?
So for me, I have created Leon von Holmesheim's mansion for mine. I've done 2 mock-ups of it. One was actually following legit blueprints of a Victorian house and kind of modifying them a little bit to fit what I thought. And then once I figured out how that worked, I actually made another version of his mansion that was a bit more to what I was imagining. And then I just finished a giant freaking project of making the Crystal Palace from the early 1900s London.
Ooh.
Before it got burnt down, which was a lot of work. I spent
days and days
working on that, but then his.
Well, so I've got a few pictures here. I'm not sure which is from whom.
This is from his.
These are all from the Grand Wizard Hall.
Okay, so these are all ones you've been working on for yours, John. So, all right. So talk to me what you've been building as I will go through a couple of the shots that you've sent me.
So initially I was going to try to do the whole world, and I think I will, but I'm like, well, I can start out small. The Grand Wizard Hall is in its own universe that they've created, pocket universe. And so it's where all the wizards are, and it's big and it's massive, especially because it's meant to host, have guest dragons show up. So I started with the hall itself, which was bigger than I planned. Well, not bigger than I planned. It was a bigger project than I anticipated. Because of the pillars, and Minecraft is, it's limited, so you got to figure out what can I do to make it work. So big pillars, skylights looking on the false blue sky. The door at the end, the big green doors, is supposed to lead into the Council of Masters, which I think I sent in the later screenshots of that. As well as the first screenshot you're seeing, I think that's what's up on screen now, is like where you would see when you first portal in. And then I think that shot there is looking back where you portal in.
Towards the portal.
Yeah.
It looks like the next one is going to be maybe the hall itself. It looks like
maybe that depends on the order. Yeah, so that's my mock-up of the Council of Masters. The best I could do with this, but
within Minecraft. I mean, hey, I've seen many projects, and there's a point where it's still the world you're after. It's just you accept that it's. I don't know what you would consider Minecraft bit-wise.
So much
Minecraftified? It's Minecraftified.
So much more blocks than they used to have, so it makes it a little bit easier, but still frustrating because it's like, dang it, I need like 2 shades lighter.
and I know that there are mods out there, but I'm trying to build it within the confines that anyone, once I finish it, I could put it up for download.
Yeah, so that anybody could experience and actually go through the world. And another one looks like it's
that's from the
flying and looking down.
That's from the Grand Hall again instead of the Council of Masters. Yeah.
It's interesting too, seeing the massive door area that's kind of there versus the little smaller doors on the side kind of bit.
I didn't send you any screenshots of it, but I've also started now on, if you remember from book 1, where basically the quarters for all the wizards are. I've started working on that, and that's ended up being...
It is taking so much time.
Because I'm realizing that I'm going to have to make rooms for every single wizard.
He's actually furnishing them.
A few of them anyway. Yeah.
You're doing it like full on. You could live here. This is verbatim from the book.
Well, as close as I could make it anyway. Yeah.
Well, so with that in mind, if you go to expand to the world outside of the Wizard Hole, which is its own world, are you going to take like the maps from the book and start laying out a world that is similar?
He tried.
I was going to. I started to do that with where the first city is, Arcanon. And after spending days and days and days of manually placing mountains and stuff, I realized that I hadn't even made it big enough yet for the city itself, let alone the rest of the world. I found online there is, I think it's called MC Edit, you can from an overhead create a map.
That it'll basically create the seed from that, or be able to fill in from.
Right.
Probably much easier to paint in 2D.
Yes, paint the world.
Basically. Than it is to try to.
World Painter, that's what it was actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
World Painter is the name of what I'm using.
Because I've never created the world in Minecraft. I've only ever built my own things within Minecraft, and I've always done some silly things. Like I always do the stupid thing where I dig to the bedrock and build a tower up to the heavens essentially. And my silly thing in Minecraft is then somewhere because I'll get tired partway up of building the tower, of trying to come back down and get stuff and things like that, because I'm always doing it in survival mode, is that I will put a pool somewhere just off of it so that I always have an easy way to jump back down.
Instead of go down the stairs.
Yes, always is like, and here's my diving board.
Yep.
From this height.
I think I've done that on a couple of my houses too. I'm like, I go up to shoot things and I need to get down there to get all the experience points, so just jump off.
Yep. And so for me, I realize I'm a creature of habit, in the sense that every time I've done a Minecraft server, I will do something that is fine and normal, and then it's like, now I'm building to the ground. Now I'm building steps down to bedrock every time. And then I go back and I'm like, now I must build to the heavens. Every time. It's so ridiculous. Anyhow, but no, it's really cool to actually hear you guys creating like the worlds that you've created, but in another medium, in a place that people will be able to go and experience it at some point and be able to see what's there. Because I've seen some projects. I've seen people do things from Lord of the Rings. I've seen a great example of someone doing the Starship Enterprise and a full Minecraft blocks and stuff like that.
He used a software that took the blueprints and
helped.
Yeah. But it's still impressive. It looks
just to even get it into, again, the Minecrafting it into whatever those blocks are. And so that by itself is really interesting. Yeah. So Minecraft being a game that you guys have both been able to kind of play with and extend your creativity into, what other games are you kind of into?
Well, I can't really say we.
I said you each have your own things.
Playing Mass Effect,
the trilogy.
And I watched, because that's not my type of game. I'm not very good at those kinds of games, so
but they're engaging
it was more
to watch.
Just I like to watch games happening. So
and that's a very story-driven game.
Side. Unfortunately, we didn't Twitch those ones because I don't know, just too much, I felt like it was probably going to overload or something. But we've just
technology.
We just started Champions of Norath. Okay. Yeah. And then we are going to do BioShock eventually.
Nice.
Because steampunk.
It is right there, especially when they added Infinite and doing they have the remasters for 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I bought those. It's just kind of, we contain to one game at a time usually.
You Minecraft are so more disciplined than I am.
Minecraft is just kind of our go-to if there's nothing else we really want to do. It's like, okay, let's just poke around. But we haven't even done that lately. It's kind of been our personal things on Minecraft lately.
Just building out your worlds.
Building out our worlds. Eventually, we do want to do, maybe not necessarily Twitch stream, but a video so you can actually walk through and see.
Actually talk through, maybe kind of introduce a person. Yes, actually give them the grand tour of your worlds. That would be really cool. We started
working on the airship that's at the very beginning of Bloody Notes, and you weren't there when it happens. I don't know how it happened. I have a boiler in the middle of the airship.
Okay.
Oh, no.
And I started building a wooden plank shift around it, thinking, well, it's contained within iron.
Oh no.
Oh no.
It started everything on fire. I was like, oh god, water everywhere. I had to rebuild the center of the column.
The actual issue of making anything steampunk, right? like I said, certain things just don't work together, like fire and wood.
So I was like, okay,
Or
I
they
have
work
to make
together.
all of my plank walkarounds within here in stone so it doesn't catch on fire. Yet somehow my wooden fence planks that were up against it weren't catching on fire. So whatever.
Weird.
Having to work within the physics engine
Yeah.
of Minecraft.
Yeah.
Oh, that's entertaining. That's good. That's
That
good.
was frustrating. I think it was like 5 minutes before you got home. I finished putting it back together. I was like,
Oh gosh. I think that's one of the biggest challenges of Minecraft. Every time we've hosted a server for VTW is we generally try to say play nice, but it's not that anyone intentionally does something. But sometimes it's survival mode. So a night may happen and creepers come around and next thing you know you're as they blow up half your
Witches.
creation.
Frickin' witches. Hate them.
I prefer them over the creepers at this point.
All depends on what you're creating, right? But at some point when something takes something out, you're just like, the amount of time I spent.
If I have my bow.
Well,
Up close, no.
but it's like, that has become the most aggravating thing when especially like when we're out trying to build a road to a new location, and all of a sudden you just hear this. Shh.
You're like, oh, shh.
Get away from the thing I'm creating. Let it blow up somewhere else.
Right. Just run.
Yeah, every time we've done like massive minecart routes places, and then
Oh yeah.
because you could fight it off. You put enough torches everywhere, enough lights and stuff, and mostly you can deal with it.
We think that we have enough light, and then we turn around and there's a frickin' creeper, and I'm like,
Yep. Oh, for me it's always spiders because they're the ones where I think I'm safe, and then
Oh.
they suddenly pop up above something, and I'm just like, awesome.
Their ability to crawl over most things is annoying.
Yes, gets
and
annoying.
climb up walls.
Yep. No, that's fun to hear. So the nice thing is people, you can go out and watch some of the streams of what you guys have been playing and things that you do. It's fun to hear that you kind of go through those together.
We're trying to get more of our old streams up, but
Our
with
internet
moving
sucks.
into our new apartment, our internet is really, really crappy.
Damn you, CenturyLink.
Hey, again to the world about net neutrality and how I'm a big fan of everyone supporting their municipal, municipal internet is something we should all be after. That way we don't have dirty, large ISPs charging far too much for far too little.
Yeah, they have a special contract.
An agreement that basically makes it a monopoly where
And they're
only
like, well,
DSL.
Yeah.
I fought it.
Yeah,
Oh, I
we
don't know.
tried so
Well,
hard.
we talked about it when you first tried into that. I was like, I don't think that's legal. And in premise, it's not. But
they
they
were
signed a
enforcing it.
contract.
It's the apartment's choice to
Yeah.
make it exclusive, and that's where it pisses
Yeah,
us off.
because that becomes the private company asking, which I wonder what kickbacks they got to screw all the people that are members of their complex, because DSL in that area is garbage.
Yeah.
So,
40
anyhow.
down, 2 up.
Two up is
That's the best we can get.
pain,
So,
which
yeah,
when you're
we
trying to
haven't
stream.
gotten any of our old videos up onto Twitch. So if we are streaming, please try to catch us when we are
Yeah,
streaming.
catch it live. The best opportunity.
Because, and even then it's a little bit glitchy, as some of our
It'll-
friends have told
As
us. They're
any
like, "Oh
any
my
viewer
gosh."
of this show will tell you, as Hando in there was asking specifically for me to put it at 720 today instead of 1080 so he could watch. Just for you, Hando. Just for you. And welcome.
Ice swallows Simon? Can I?
No, you don't say those.
No. Oh, okay.
Those are traps.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, well.
Anyhow.
Yeah, we've yeah.
No.
Yeah, our personal experience with that.
Oh, come on. You guys know about internet trolls on Twitch?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we found out about that
The hard way?
the first time that we decided, oh, hey, let's actually put the chat on the stream as well.
That was a mistake.
And that was absolutely horrible.
Until you found
So
the
until-
options of moderation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And letting your fans moderate with you, the ones you trust.
Yes. Because I think with one of our last streams, they're like, oh, hey, you should have me help you. And I'm like, I don't know you, dude.
The fans you trust.
Yeah,
the ones
so
that come
a couple
back.
of our friends that were like, yeah, we know you. We know that you are out for our support and good things and stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we don't
We just
do
don't
the chat on our stream anymore because now I have to go in and edit the chat before we can put it up on our Twitch.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Again, the joys of a live show.
Yep.
But it happens.
Yeah.
You go forth, you prosper. So, So that was pretty much everything we wanted to discuss about the things you guys are involved in and what you're putting out there. Anything else last that you want people to be aware of, or where they might be able to reach you, follow you, things like that for any of your various projects?
I know that well, and I've got it posted in the beginning of my books, but we do have blogs, and we each have our own blog.
What can people find on the blogs?
I just touched my blog again for the first time in a year and a half because things were getting busy with the wedding, so I wasn't posting. Things still were getting busy afterwards, so finally slowing down, finally able to post again. Can find the link to my blog, because I can't think of what it is right now, on my Facebook page, which is Beck Wasik Author.
Mine's author Jon Wasik for Facebook.
So those are all locations you can find, and we'll put in the show notes so that everyone can reach out and keep up with what you guys are doing.
And then cosplay-wise, we are sharing my old cosplay page, New Moon Crafts, for all the cosplay funds and things, and crafting and whatevers. We each have Instagram now. Yay. Finally got him on Instagram. His is Terror 2002. Mine is Dark Side of Moon, which I am not going to try to tell you how to do that, so we'll give you the links later.
Yes, like I said, we will have links in the notes. Weird. You can catch it out there.
Yeah. I'm very creative with my spellings, so yeah.
Nice. So we did want to actually talk a little bit about some geek news and things that are going on today, since we are all active in the community.
Oh.
Look at you with the transition, making everybody get ready to cry.
Oh.
So, of course, one of the biggest stories that's come out this last week, that since the last time we had been on the show, is our condolences and our remembrance turn out to everyone who's a fan, because unfortunately, legend has finally passed, and that is that Stan Lee has passed away at the far more than ripe old age of 95 years old.
Yeah.
While a lot of people are expressing their sorrow at his passing, I have been maybe on the counter side a little bit of saying, but you know what? What a time to go. Because this is a gentleman who has brought through creativity, tenacity, business sense, and some other things throughout his many, many years of being a geek, has provided for all of us some of our favorite characters, stories, and things like that for anyone around comic book characters, comic book stories, things like that, especially now. And this is where I'm actually more celebration of his life than anything, because what a time to go in the sense that, yeah, he's 95 years old. Man's lived a bit.
Yeah.
And he has had some of his worst years and down years long in the past.
Yeah.
Because he got to go out at a ripe old age when almost all of his works are at like the peak of their popularity. Because there have been ebbs and flows throughout the years of comic book popularity and challenges between DC and Marvel and things like that throughout the decades, right? Where everyone had a thing. You know, back at the beginning of Marvel, I had the opportunity to read one of these biography books kind of about the starting of Marvel and Stan Lee in particular, where DC was the big guy on the block when Marvel was first starting to make its own thing, and some of the challenges it was even of publishing and things around that time for the kind of characters they created. He went through some seriously hard times where nothing was happening and comics weren't even a thing.
Yeah.
And then was able to, not single-handedly, but definitely through a lot of effort, create a world in which comics stayed relevant.
Well, a big part of it, from what I remember reading recently, I think it was in the 60s, he totally turned around how comic characters were being presented, and he started making it to where you write them as flawed people.
Back in the original, it's one of the discussions that were always my interpretation of it between DC and Marvel. One of the reasons I've primarily been a Marvel fan throughout most of my childhood is that my simple explanation is DC characters were always written as kind of the pantheon of gods, that their characters were all extremely powerful in their own right, and they represented kind of the heads of various types of gods from different mythology. Marvel characters were done differently in the sense that, to finish off the DC discussion, my opinion was that DC characters were given these massive powers, and then to make them interesting or to make them at least fallible, were then given a weakness. So they, like Superman, primary weakness originally being kryptonite.
Yeah.
And come on. My opinion, that was like the most cheese thing you could do. You mean the irradiated version of his own planet will kill you? What? Later, they added the weakness against magic so that they could expand it out a little bit. But for me, that always made it a very hollow experience where you had some character that was otherwise omnipotent except for these flaws. That Wonder Woman, and especially now, it had gotten super powerful when they took away her weakness, right? I always jokingly say, because most people were never aware, her weakness being that she would lose all powers when bound by the hand of man. Original Wonder Woman, if she got bound, yes, by a man, she lost all her powers.
Huh.
Who was that written by? And you can see the reaction that Becca's got for that concept. It's why it does not exist anymore. They have modernized the character. It does not exist. Green Lantern having a thing where green versus yellow, right? Different things like that where different powers, different, right?
Big Bang Theory, they brought that up. And he was like, oh yeah, the color yellow in wood can defeat him with a number 2 pencil.
But that's the thing, right? So my challenge has always been that with DC heroes, they were massively powerful and then given some weakness so that they were at least now relevant, or somehow you could write stories around that. Yeah. With Marvel characters and what Stan Lee provided and everything within Marvel, to me, was they took a regular person and gave them powers and wrote, how would a regular person exist with this power or this set of powers? And to me, that was a much more brilliant way of creating characters, because now you created people, you created stories, actual real characters that had, right, that had real stories versus some magical omnipotent being that couldn't relate to people. You know, you created people that had real issues, that had real problems in their lives, that had real stories. They just also happen to have some abilities that allowed them to get through those situations differently. Much like when you're talking about having magic or gadgets or things like that in the stories you write, it's much more believable, right? Because you're not just dealing with a god character, you're dealing with the person next door that just happens to have this extraordinary ability. And so that's something that I really was a fan of what Marvel brought to comic books that I wasn't seeing, in my opinion, from the DC characters outside of a few.
Yeah.
I always say Batman being somewhat...
He's unique.
Unique for what DC presents.
There's a reason he's one
of the most popular. Yeah, absolutely. But I also say, like, as much as people are mourning, because, I mean, yes, it's always sad to see the passing of a talent. At the same time, he probably couldn't have passed at a better time. Yeah. I mean, if you just look at the Marvel movies, what have we had in the MCU right now? Over 20 movies that have come out, and it's just grown. From when Iron Man first hit, which was more than a decade ago, it has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. The fact that he's filmed his cameo for Avengers 4, so we will see him one more time officially.
And then Deadpool will take over.
I love the meta and the things that people have been talking about on social media about those aspects. It's not so much the lamenting and sorrow, because you could be sad, but at the same time, come on, he's 95 years old. He's gonna die. Come on, I mean, we can only hope so much. So
everyone thought he was gonna be immortal, and it's like, no.
I mean, he's not actually the Watcher. Come on. And so, as much as that would have been amazing, and at least I'm happy he talked to them. But it's one of those things that I love that people have gone to the good sides of things and actually seen that, look at what this guy's done and what he was able to live as we're going out. Because some of the pictures, I mean, a lot of people in our community especially posted photos of themselves with Stan, opportunities they've had at Comic-Con and stuff like that to have photos with. I never did, but it's fun to see them all come out there and such. And just remembering times they've been able to interact with him, that he was still doing the con scene all the way up to this last year kind of thing is phenomenal. That he, the videos that came out with him just randomly talking about his love of his fans and such lets you know how much he appreciated what he was doing and that he was aware of the impact he had. And I don't think enough people get to see that. Most of our famous artisans from the past, our painters and things like that, never were famous in their own time frame. Right. They never got to see people appreciate their talent to really what it was, where Stan Lee did. Stan Lee got to see an entire world circulate around things that he created. He got to experience that. He got to know that people loved him. How cool is that? Yeah. Right? So I throw that out there not to take anything away from what he's done. It's actually to celebrate and actually highlight it more, but to let you know that he went out on a high note.
Yeah, that's
in
awesome.
so many ways. Because even I know so many creatives who their work doesn't get appreciated in their lifetime.
And they usually, when they pass, it's during an extremely low note in their life.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And his was not. His was at the high note. I mean, you have pictures from him at DragonCon, a year or two ago? MCing it in the car with two beautiful girls cosplaying as characters of his next to him, right? Can't ask for a better way to go. So, I mean, yes, we are absolutely bringing up the fact that he has passed, and it is a sad moment for all of us geeks and all of us who are comic book lovers, but at the same time, you go, Stan. You did amazing things. Wow. To talk to that note about, I do hope, because one of the aware moments that someone had posted is that you realize of all the characters in the Marvel Universe, the only one who's aware of Stan Lee's passing is Deadpool.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one who's self-aware that he's a comic book character. Which is like, but at the same time, there's a moment of like, whoa. At the second time, what you had said, Beck, specifically about, I agree. I support that from here on out, any other cameos should be done by Deadpool.
Just random shots of him in the background or something.
As I've seen other people say, complete with gray wig, aviator
Oh, God,
glasses.
going so far as to being Stan? I had not heard that one.
No,
And him going in as Stan Lee, like doing the part.
dressed as Stan, but still.
Oh
in the
my
red
God!
suit.
So the best part, because it's Ryan Reynolds, right? And he would do so good at it.
Right.
Oh, I would support that 100%. To have him be just in character as Stan Lee doing a cameo. That's brilliant. Please make that happen.
Right.
I love that. I really do. No, that would be wonderful. Shoot. Well, and a good segue out of the Stan Lee discussion, because that, what else is there to say? Is there anything you guys particular? Because I know,
there's not really
like I said,
anything to say.
Marvel was my world. When it came to comic books, Marvel was my thing until later for me it was Vertigo with, DC's only good brand. Vertigo when it came to Neil Gaiman and Hellblazer and stuff like that. So Sandman, Hellblazer, like the serious arcane type comics. Other than that, it was Marvel until Image came out, because Image and so there's that. So, but like favorite Marvel character.
Captain.
Yeah, for you. It's easy. I'm not sure
That's easy.
have
It's always
one.
it's all
Pictures aside, let alone anything I might have put on John's bachelor party thing. John, for you, I know that you're a DC fan when it comes to
he's more
Superman,
DC.
but
I
from
do-
a more Marvel perspective.
I had a hard time ever coming up with a favorite Marvel favorite. I like a lot of them, especially the ones they've portrayed in the movies. For a while, it was Iron Man. I know you didn't like him, but mostly because intellect and technology. Plus, yeah.
No.
There was a true civil war in my household back when I still lived with my parents, because my dad was all Iron Man and I'm all Cap, and I'm like, "Mrr."
Oh, that's hilarious. That is actually funny, because we should have that geek fight. No, because I'm cool with Cap for the most part until Civil War. Because giving up the country for your bromance, I have issue with, because I think that went against Captain's character.
I don't know. Spider-Man, too, especially when I was younger, especially. I was
going to say, I have had love for Spider-Man since way back. I have so many issues. That for me, it was X-Men.
Yeah.
X-Men was my first.
X was pretty, yeah.
Because I loved Wolverine back in the day and all that kind of stuff. So
Before
X-Men,
he was cool. No, just kidding.
Well, but I mean, he was always cool, right?
Yeah, he
and
was.
I had gone back collecting Wolverine comics and stuff. I think I have most of his, up to like 50 or something. But things like that
just
throughout.
read the-
So
Pikachu.
So-
Cool.
The Pikapool.
so I was leading it down this path on purpose, as we're about done with our time for the show today. But one of the other things that is to mention as we talk about this is there's something else that Ryan Reynolds has been announced and showing.
And we saw previews for it when we saw Fantastic Beasts yesterday.
And
Friday.
I've seen the preview for it. I watched it and was interested.
It's crazy.
So there may be opinions on this, but there's been announced a live action version of a Pokemon story, which Ryan Reynolds is starring in
It's Pikachu.
as Pika. But not just Pika. as in like, oh crap, you can hear me?
Yeah, what the heck?
So
That was crazy.
So what's happening in the Pokemon world is we are going to be getting a movie, Detective Pikachu.
What the heck?
So
No.
it's interesting because I've heard some very mixed responses to this trailer that I'm showing, that I have video going on now as I'm talking over it and showing. And it's interesting. So what are your guys' opinion?
Oh my god, I don't know. When it first started playing, I was like, is there a new game that I don't know about? What's going on? This is a very interesting way to show a video game. And then as it was progressing, I'm like, wait a minute.
This is really
This isn't going to be a video game. This is going to be a movie? What the heck?
And then at one point I'm sitting there,
And
I'm like,
then when Pikachu was actually talking, like legitimately
Is that Ryan
talking, I was
Reynolds?
like, what the hell?
it's like, is that Ryan Reynolds? Is that is him?
Oh yes. Well, it's
I
funny
was like,
too.
wait, the only one that talks is Meowth. What the hell's going on?
You can hear me.
So okay.
They only hear Pika Pika. Oh, Pika
Well,
Pika.
but they play into that in the trailer,
Yeah.
right? Because specifically, it is the one lead character, the boy in it, who can hear and understand Pikachu.
I'm so weird
That
about
no one else can, and it shows that little bit of him struggling with it. Like, do you not hear them? And everyone's like, "Oh, Pika Pika, yeah, Pikachu," and he's like, "See, no one can hear me," So
Pika Pika.
So what is it? Because I got the response from you guys when you first mentioned that you are concerned with what you're seeing in this movie and what's being portrayed. What is it that is drawing about that concern?
I think it was that particular scene that you were talking about where he's trying. Don't you hear him talking? And the woman's like, "Ah, Pika Pika," and it looks like they probably cut out a specific comment that Pikachu makes,
Something a little more colorful?
a little
seems
more
like this is gonna be
colorful.
more
And
of
I'm
an
like,
adult movie,
this
yeah.
is not. This is going to be more for adults, isn't it?
So you say that? I don't know, because
I'm kind of
Ryan
scared.
Reynolds. So the problem is you hear Ryan Reynolds and you hear Deadpool.
Yeah, and I think that might be it.
Peekaboo.
Yes.
So what you're really hearing is what
I'm just
your mind, like we talked
nervous.
about before, it fills in the blanks. And so what you hear is Ryan Reynolds saying, "Are you effing kidding me? Look at all these, expletive. That kind of. I can understand that. We're fresh off of not seeing Ryan Reynolds do anything PG, and so
As
I
of
can
late.
understand why that could be a difficult sell.
So yeah, that.
I love. We talked about it before the show. He got wind of one of the many fan arts out there of Pikachu in the Deadpool costume, and he said, "I don't know who did this, but thank you." And I love that he appreciates his fans.
Oh, come on. He is a geek, and we know it. So the funny part for me is I may be this dissenting opinion in the room. I am excited
I'm
for
just
Detective
nervous.
Pikachu.
I'm
Oh, no.
just nervous.
I'm excited because I guess I've consumed enough things, and I maybe I'm in a darker place than some people. But, well, I love some of the things that memes that go out where people are like, I don't want to actually see it this way. Seeing essentially live versions of Pokemon,
I've always
is
wanted to as a kid.
I've always wanted to, and I've seen some rendition. I've seen everything from the artist rendition of like Far Too Real, like
Yeah, they're, like,
grotesque,
creepy.
actual creature type. But you see that response, right? Where you're kind of like, at the same time, it's kind of cool. I actually appreciate some of those. It's like when I've seen the hyper real versions of Dragon Ball Z characters and stuff like that, where I'm like, dude, some of them look that is cool.
I don't know.
It'd be
about
even
that.
creepy. Well, see, like,
I'm
Majin
scared to see
Buu.
that now.
Majin Buu is like a realistic representation. Is like creepy, but like, yeah, that's a villain. And I really like
need to
it.
see
I'll have to
these.
show you after the show. I'll have to show you. But also some of those where it's like, so for me, I'm excited because some of the things they show in this, the world I think looks neat. That they are showing a world where Pokemon are an everyday thing. And so in the background of the trailer, you see all these little Pokemon like flying about
Running around.
doing things, right? And I've seen some of the breakouts where it talks about like showing some of the like other things they see. There's the scene right there where it's like Pikachu, see, they don't understand.
They don't
me.
understand me.
But when you see some of the stuff in this next summer, but where he's looking around and there's Pokemon throughout the world, right? There's other things happening. You see it in what's going on the boards and stuff like that, to what's in the background around people. There's a scene in a fight scene where like in like who would be up on the actual fight and stuff. I am loving the visuals. I'm loving that it looks like a fully actualized world. and not that they're just picking little scenes here and there and that the CG's obvious. For me, it looks like they're really doing a good job of trying to put these characters into the world and have them act appropriate.
Sorry, that Mr.
Oh, I know. When you
Mime
see Mr. Mime and stuff.
The mime.
The face and yeah. No, it's just... Wait, is he telling me to... Yeah. And so I'm excited for it because I think they are self-aware about the kind of humor that they're providing. And I actually have a positive spin on what I hope it'll be. And I mean, it goes along the same lines of me hoping that they can break kind of those traditions of a lot of anime related things or animated cartoon related things come into real life, whether they succeed or not. I'm hoping it will. I'm hoping it has enough good names attached to it that we will get something we can all kind of just have a silly, fun time going to see, that I can go in my Pokemon Go trainer cosplay and show up, or I can go in Brock. I can go in my Brock cosplay and show up and be like,
you go as Brock, you gotta let me come as Ashley.
So it's one of those where it's just like, I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it'll be great. And so, yes. And copy saying we're going to see it. We're actually talking about for Anime North doing Pokemon cosplay for that one. So anyhow, with that though,
cosplay my books.
What? Oh, cosplay for your books?
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool to see someone do that.
Well, I still have to print you a sword at some point here. But with this, it is time for us to end the show because we have been on the air for our full 2 hours.
Dang.
As crazy as it seems like that time goes, huh?
Right.
Always fun. Time flies when you're having fun.
Time's fun when you're having flies.
When your flies open? Wait.
Wait,
But
what? Oh. Yeah.
So, before we do anything that is less safe for air, we are going to let you all go, but appreciate you coming in. If you have any questions or feedback that you'd like to give for either John or Beck, or if you'd like to have any more information about their books and what's coming out, just send an email in to showx@vtwproductions.com, and we'll pop everything along for them to be able to respond to. Okay. Appreciate you guys coming in and listening today, and appreciate you guys joining me to help talk to me about what you've been up to as the authors I know. And so thank you for that. And with that, it is time for us to go. So last shout outs for you guys.
Oh, hi.
Exactly. With that. So follow us every week.
Goodbye.
You catch us here live every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT for 2 hours as we talk about all things geek and whatever our lives are up to, basically, as we go each week on ShowX. Follow what we do on VTW Productions and on our Facebooks. You can follow us there. Also, just as a problematic note, that our friends over who have been streaming with 24T are going to be taking a holiday hiatus. They went through all of, what did they play? They played Castlevania, they played Mega Man, and I think they were doing something else, but they're saying they're going to take a break over the holidays and we'll start up with us again, start of the new year. So, but go back, if you haven't watched, go ahead and check all those. But with that, it is time for us to get out of here. So thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you again
Bye, everyone.
next week. Bye.
Goodbye. See you next zombie.